name is Rashad Kazmi. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing here. I also have John Weaver, who is our account executive. He'll be demonstrating Knapsack. Then we also have Kim and Kelly from our sales and marketing team to assist and help us. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll end the poll and we'll jump into a quick presentation just so that we can help you guys understand at a high level where Knapsack fits into the organization. And then I promise we'll jump right into the demo after just a couple minutes, few minutes. So, um, what is Knapsack? Knapsack's a design system management platform. We are really aiming at trying to create a unified platform that brings design and code together. And when we're able to do that and consolidate a lot of the different systems and tooling, that really opens the doors for a lot more things that have higher impact. So I want to start by just, talking about the elephant in the room. And the way that we build digital production products or digital products is a hot mess. We have so many tools, manual processes, handoffs, repeat work, and tons of chaos. There has to be a better way. When we look at some of the ecosystem and the different team members that are involved in our digital production process, we really start seeing that there's a wide variety of interests and intent that exists, but overall, everybody's trying to work and accomplish the same goals. And so, one of the first challenges that we identify is this challenge of disparate tools. And what this happens is because we have so many different folks that are interacting in this process, everybody's kind of use the tools that they're most comfortable with. If it's on the design side, it might be Figma. On the development side, it might be a component library that exists within a certain framework like React. And it creates this information silo that really has a lot of manual maintenance to try to figure out where everything lies. A lot of times we see entire spreadsheets that are being kept. And that can also lead to different version discrepancies, um, which leads to multiple revisions, costly rework, and friction that occurs between team members. So a lot of times the band-aid solution is, well, let's document what we have, whether it's in a spreadsheet or it's in a documentation tool. We can go ahead and identify guidelines where these things should be used, how they should be used. But what we often find is that they're still fragmented because we have designers having their source of truth, developers having their source of truth, and we still have a disconnect in terms of trying to achieve that design to code parity. And so the fragmented systems get multiplied based off of the size of the organization. There could be multiple design teams, multiple development teams, product teams, brand teams. And as you can imagine, these can really result in fragmented systems that create a secondary challenge of conflicting sources of truth, out-of-date documentation, documentation only being as good as the last time it was updated, being hard to even keep up with it and read all of that documentation, inconsistent UI. We've seen within one brand website, multiple different types of buttons. And this leads to redundant efforts and inefficient workflows and the unscalable chaos that can exist as you can imagine as things are multiplied in the organization. So Knapsack has one solution, which is a unified platform to first bring all of the tooling into one centralized location. But when we're able to, and I want to talk about how we do that. There's some of the things that we're able to replace, but there's also other things that we're able to integrate with the tools that, for example, your designers and your engineers are already comfortable working with, whether that's Figma on the design side or it's your code component libraries that exist on the development side. And when we're able to bring it all in one place, we're able to create a central source of truth and be able to have integrated tools that help streamline processes and reduce a lot of those manual upkeeping by just simply connecting into these sources. This leads to a better central government governance, design to code parity, and reduced overhead of not having to maintain multiple systems and making sure things um, are are essentially kept up to date and so on. So additionally, what ends up happening is when we're able to pull from multiple sources, so just imagine all those fragmented systems that might exist. There might be multiple code repositories, there might be multiple Figma files and design sources. We're able to create a system of record that gives us these next level benefits because then we're able to disseminate adoption or democratize our components and assets, and maintain consistency and operational efficiency across the board. And this leads to a lot of those high-level executive priorities that everybody cares about and that we can yeah, really help with, which is accelerating digital production, enhancing team productivity, and even setting a foundation for a future of AI with the way that we consolidate the structured data from both design and the engineering ecosystem. And now we have a win-win for everybody. And we also have some prototyping capability that John will show that even attracts our product managers who now don't just have to look at a document and figure out how these components can be used. They can actually play with a playground and drag and drop and move things around and change things so that they can start getting more benefits with a design system.
All right, awesome. Thanks everybody for filling that out. Rashad focused in that opening on connecting your design, development, product teams to a central source of truth, right? And the value that's associated with that. So now I get the luxury of showing you how Knapsack does that. And then, also all the cool things that are unlocked now that we have this one amazing system of record, right? When most folks think about design systems, they think about like, how do we document what we're doing, right? So Knapsack does a lot more than just document, but we'll start there to just kind of start in the beginning, right? I'm going to click on my components section here. And right out of the gate, you see that we're providing something that a lot of teams have maybe in a shared spreadsheet somewhere or scattered out through a bunch of Jira tickets. It's just, what are the patterns that we have? And what are the statuses of them? It's incredible how powerful that can be to teams who don't have it already, right? But having trust in a system, right? That's what's most important, right? And everything in here is completely customizable. So your drop downs may look a lot different than what ours do. Your columns, you may have different frameworks that you're using. We do support React and Vue and Angular and web components and mustache and handlebars, right? All of these different framework templates, language, but just the idea of being able to wrap our arms around what's ready for prime time and what still needs a little bit more love before we can use it in product is incredibly helpful. And of course, we can, click into any of these. And when we start talking about documentation, what we're seeing here, this usage tab is what teams typically will think of when they think of documentation, right? Knapsack makes this very easy. This is a WYSIWYG editor. So, we can edit this information here, this content right here within the web UI. These are, as Rashad alluded to, drag and drop. So if we want to change how these are laid out, or if we want to change the size of these, we can, make multiple columns, that sort of thing right here very easily. And the great thing is you don't have to be a developer, a web developer, or know how to write code or do anything like that to be able to edit these documents, which really creates an ability for this to democratize who owns and who, through a proper permissioning, of course, but really democratize who can update these, who can edit these, right, and make this valuable for the team to use. And there really reduces a lot of bottlenecks in being able to do that. We work on a block system here in Knapsack. There's lots of different types of blocks, which we won't cover in today's conversation, but happy to do so on a one-on-one demo. But the most powerful types of blocks that we have are blocks that are leveraging either our design assets or code assets, right? And when we talk about code assets, we're talking about those production assets that are living within your Git repository right now that teams can actually use in production, right? In this case, I've got my button template that's been attached to Knapsack, and Knapsack is consuming this template just like any product would be out in the real world, right? But we get some key benefits to it that we don't necessarily get to see, in product, right? For instance, we're able to loop over the different props. So I can see kind of in a couple clicks, my different button types, my different button sizes, my different button modes, all here right in the Knapsack UI as part of the documentation. And this is what we're starting to talk about as far as like being able to create, consume, maintain these docs really easily, is when we have dynamic documentation that can change as the source material changes. So for instance, if I have my 3 sizes of buttons here and my dev group, they say they update this template to accommodate a size extra large button. Well, I don't have to go back and change all my documentation, right? That size extra large button is going to be showing up here in our documentation as Knapsack consumes it, as a new iteration or new variation of this button template, right? So it saves teams a ton of time, and they can know that the thing that they're looking at in the documentation is actually the thing that teams or users will touch within product itself. I can go one step farther. I can easily create entire pages or subpages of documentation, right? I've got a design source tab here where when I click on it, Knapsack is saying, okay, we've got a couple design source files here that are connected to Knapsack already. In these case, they're Figma. Now, what do we want to see? What do we want to see in this documentation, right? I've got my button component. We can preview these, my card component. We can preview all of this just by clicking on it. I can open up this Figma file if I'm, if I'm a product person and I want to come look deeper into what's in here, I can see that, right? If I want to inspect things. But in this case, we're creating documentation for our button. So I'm going to check on I'm going to select my button here and save that selection. And then just in a couple clicks, Knapsack is creating this entire page of documentation on, what I have as a design asset. And I can rename this. I can do whatever I want with this pretty easily, right? But what it's showing me is not just visually what buttons I have, right? But it's also looking at the spec that's associated with that. And that's super important. And we can see the spec down here as well, because that's step one. Rashad talked about structured data to be able to leverage in future uses of your design system, specifically AI, or being able to compare design intent with user reality. And having the data, the spec data in here is very powerful. It's the first step to getting really powerful information associated with that when we want to start comparing. Because you can see I have another page here that compares my design component, what I have in Figma, and my coded component, meaning what I have for production in my Git repository. To be able to see what the differences are, to be able to compare what the prop difference are, the spec alignment, so on and so forth. And this is step one to reducing time in QA. In fact, Knapsack customers are seeing about a 30% time reduction in QA by using Knapsack versus using separate segmented tooling that don't talk to each other, that one team may have access to, but another team doesn't, or one team may be familiar with and another team isn't, right? We're not just introducing new tooling, we're actually leveraging the work that you're already doing in those tools to bring them into that central location, right? And this is step one to being able to do that. You can also see I have a React tab here and a web component. What they're doing, what these are these are the actual component themselves being rendered within inside Knapsack. In this case, I have something in React and something in web components, right? but I've got different variations of this button that I can build out, meaning me as a non-technical user can build out different variations. I can add new demos, right? And what this does is it allows teams to build this out without having to get key dev resources involved doing it. If I know anything about, the devs that work here in Knapsack, they love delivering on roadmaps. They absolutely love that. And they love to kind of keep their heads down and get to work, right? They don't necessarily love building out a bunch of different variations because they don't know necessarily how they may be used, like a product manager or a designer might, who originally had that intent. So if it allows product folks or non-technical folks to be able to come in here and start prototyping or designing for new experiences, maybe I'm creating a new experience for like a flyout left navigational pane where I want to use my size small button here instead of my medium button. I can see how this re-renders. I'm really interested to see how text is associated with my button. Does the button elongate? Does the text wrap? Like, I can start to see what these things are actually doing within my my actual coded thing that my users are going to touch, right? Versus a canvas in Figma where I can kind of fake some of this stuff through or set up a happy path, right? I can actually see how this is going to render here, using the component itself. And of course, whatever we're changing on this playground here, the variables here are getting changed in the code down below. In fact, I'll go to a kind of a more complex pattern here. Let me go to our, let's see, what do we have? Where let me look at our card component to see a few more variations here. You can do things like add additional child slots to this. So maybe I want to add my author component in here, and I want to see this in its default state, right? I can see how this might work. I can drag and drop this to say maybe I want let's see if I come in here and look at this. This is my author, my default author. Maybe I want to have, no border on this. I can do that. I can see what the options are, right? All through the UI here, based on what's been enabled on this component for me to be able to configure, right? So lots of cool things to do here. We can take this one step further and start to do full page prototyping as well. So if I'm going to kind of show you a cooking show version here, because I've already got something made up here. This is an example of a landing page, right? But what this is doing is it's leveraging all of my assets that I have in the design system. So a header, a hero, a heading, different columns, different amount of columns for a grid, right? It's all leveraging here to say, okay, if I'm a product manager or if I'm a marketing person and I'm creating landing pages or I'm creating new experiences, what might this look like starting with the assets that we've already built, right? And that's the point of a design system, to reuse assets that we can already use them in other new and exciting ways, instead of building things from scratch the first time, right? So maybe I might want to, come in here and look at, I've got my 3-column grid here. Maybe I want to come in here and say, okay, on this first card, I want to add a button, right? So I can see what I can do as far as adding a button. Great, I showed that. Great, I can add that button there. Maybe I want to add a second button. Let's do that. Let's add my secondary button this time. Ooh, that doesn't look great. We've got one that's, they're different sizes. So let's go ahead and change this one to a large button so that those fit. But you know what? It looks kind of silly side by side like that. So let's go ahead and choose some layout options here. Maybe I want to do a vertical layout for these buttons. That looks a little bit better, right? Maybe I want to place use one of my design tokens that we have here in Knapsack that we imported from Figma. And maybe we want to put, 2 pixels in here for spacing, right? That's our small spacing. Now that doesn't look good. Let's go ahead and we'll do a size medium space on that, 16 pixels. That look better? Perfect. That's what I wanted. Great. We're in good shape here. I can even do things like, let me grab something real quick here. We can support, changing the images on here. Let's go ahead and add this. And let's see, and there we go. There's Rashad. Thanks, Rashad, for letting us use your name, image, and likeness. You get some NIL money coming towards you. But maybe we want to say, okay, this is a meet new singles in your area. Don't isn't that shows up at like the bottom of every news article or something you want to see, right? So we can maybe we want to take our primary button and we want to say click here to find out more, right? So now we're starting to create a dating service, apparently. We're using, our layout functionality here. Again, all with production code. All of it is done, here from a UI, all from, somebody who is not technically savvy at all. And then, by the way, it also is generating the applicable code based on the components that I already have in here that my developers have created, based on the variables and the changes that I made here, within the side panel here, to be able to reflect what I'm trying to build or what I'm trying to prototype, right? And of course, let me come back up here and hide this. We can actually use the variables and the tokens that we have that are loaded into Knapsack here to be able to change the theme. So I'm based on my fictional Arcadia brand right now, but maybe I want to see this in my basis brand and I want to see it in dark mode. And maybe I want to use my spacing theme that I set up. Instead of cozy, I want it to look like compact, right? What is that? How does that change what I'm doing? How does that change what I'm looking at? Like, this is the kind of stuff that's powerful, but only if you are able to connect both design sources, right? Those design tokens, those Figma files, those production files as well, all in one location. And then, of course, more of administrative tool here, but like being able to see, what I have, my components from like a 40,000 foot view, the statuses of them, my templates that I have for my author component. I don't have a design source here yet for it. But when I do have both design sources and actual, coded templates, then I get to do, things like, I can see what my spec alignment might look like, right? And I've got spec alignment here. It's showing me actually where I'm in alignment. I don't think I actually have any here that are not in alignment. Note to self to go ahead and do one of those for our next demo to be able to show, differences and what that looks like. But these are the types of things, again, that can save teams lots of time and energy. So it's not just about a design system. The documentation, great. But what can you do with your design system? How can we turn our design system from a reference tool to a productivity tool? And that's what Knapsack does. And that's how Knapsack operates. Everything that you see here, all the information that we've changed, all the content that we have, all lives within inside your repository. And this is just to show, where Knapsack is living. We support, connections to GitHub, GitLab, all, Bitbucket as ADO, Azure DevOps, right? And then we can actually, raise PRs. We can request reviews. We can publish this right from the UI if you have the correct permissioning, right? But all the Git commands that you might need to interact with without having to know Git, all here within Knapsack. I know we went over all this very quickly. Always happy to dig really deep into how any of this stuff like functionally works, or how a day in the life of a designer or developer would work here within Knapsack, more than what we can get into here in just a 15 to 30 minutes worth of time. But really excited to be able to share that with you guys if you'd like a one-on-one conversation about how this might work for your organization. So Rashad, that's all I had for today. I'll hand it back over to you to wrap things up if you'd like.
Yeah, thanks, John. So it's really important what we just saw there is kind of like the next evolution of design systems, where it's not just documentation and guidelines, but we're actually taking these in buildable component levels in the medium of code and giving it to other folks within the organization, so that they can, as non-technical users, without having to install NPM packages of your component libraries and interfaces, being able to start creating experiences that they can share out in the organization. And so a lot of what John showed you in the prototyping You can have an external link that you share with the organization. When you're ready to ship that, that code that John was showing is like 95% of the way there. And that's, you're going to ensure that when you're designing in the medium of code with components and interfaces that have already been proven and meet guidelines, you can have a lot more adoption across your organization because now product managers and brand managers are actually benefiting from it. They're able to do what used to take weeks in a matter of, we just saw John do in minutes, without having to involve developers and engineers every single time. So you can see the power that this has. The second aspect of this is that documentation is probably never going away, but by being able to dynamically connect into the source files, like we saw John do with the Figma files, and we can also do on the engineering side, whether it's a component library or whatever it may be, any changes that happen, we can, just click a button to refresh, and we will see those changes. Now, all the props and the specs might be updated. We may also have the visualization aspect of it get updated. There might be a brand change, etc. And of course, we can also manage that with our token design tokens and our theming capabilities as well, so that those changes are not made in the source code, but they're actually made in a centralized platform, and updates the code automatically through approval processes. So you guys can really start seeing the power that this has. It's again, the next evolution of design systems is what Knapsack's really focused on. Um, John, I know we had is there anything else you wanted to add on your end, John, or?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, what Rashad had mentioned there is really the key here. It's the next evolution of what you can do with a design system. Our customers are showing us new things that we didn't expect they would use Knapsack for every day. So really excited to see what our customers come up with, right? We did have a question, Rashad, and the question was, what does customizable mean? And I think this was in reference to the statuses that we were showing here in the demonstration. It says, can these values be tied to Jira tickets and their statuses? And the answer to that is very customizable. You can name these whatever you want. Use your common language as far as the things what you call things within your organization. I've seen teams put like projected roadmap times for release on these, which is really cool. As far as being connected to Jira tickets, we don't have a direct interaction or linkage to Jira right now. It is on our roadmap as part of a larger feedback loop, being able to, commenting and statuses and that. So we are on that. We expect to have that, released maybe sometime later this year. But for now, teams are connecting, these pages, these URLs of Knapsack into their Jira tickets for reference. So really good question. I appreciate it. It looks like that's the only question we had for today. If you want to learn more about Knapsack, happy to dig deeper into any of these with anybody. Sales@knapsack.cloud is our general sales mailbox. John@knapsack.cloud is my email address. Happy to talk through this. We love chatting about this stuff. So happy to work with you and chat with you.